Welcome to Lift Your Legacy. My name is Jacob Rupp, father, husband, and rabbi. And each week we bring you an inspiring person or message to help you unlock your inner potential and create change that will impact the future. Thank you for listening, and let's get to it. Today, I'm thrilled to have on Lisa Michaud, who is an international success coach, speaker, entrepreneur, and real estate investor. What's so exciting about Lisa is that she was basically already living a life of success. She was married. She and her husband had, financial stability, and she had an experience that completely changed her life and made her realize that even though on the outside everything looked great, she wasn't living the life that she wanted. And we go into a deep conversation about finding your life purpose, trying to figure out how to get on that purpose, what are some of the biggest setbacks that hold you back from getting to where you want, etc. And ultimately, there's a tremendous message of hope and inspiration and direction that you, the listeners, can all hopefully appreciate. So I think what's also very important is, as I had these conversations, to consider, I'm trying to provide the most value possible. Can you please give me any kind of feedback, how it goes? And we will continue to try to make this the best possible experience for you. Thank you very much for your support. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today. In our pre-call discussion, you were mentioning the fact that your baby is now about to hit the 1 year mark, which is about to have her first birthday, which is very exciting. Congratulations. Thank you. Also your business, as you're sort of watching your daughter grow, you're also watching your business grow and exploring a lot of new exciting ventures and opportunities. So give me a little bit of background in terms of how you got to where you are today and what you're looking at in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, by the way. This is such an honor and really exciting to connect with you and all of your community. So my name is Lisa Michaud, and I came from a pretty traditional background, to be super honest with you. I kind of did all the right things. I went to university. I even studied. I was going to be a lawyer at first, and I thought, that seems a little bit boring, so I'll switch to accounting because that's much more exciting, right? Right. Okay. I know. What was I thinking? So I graduated with a double major in accounting and finance, and decided I will hire people to do that because it's just not my strength. And so, of course, pretty quickly afterwards, I got a career. The career with the benefits and the pension, and all those really wonderful things that my parents always were so proud to share with people. Bought a house, got married, and life was pretty good. We both had multiple six-figure incomes. We had a rental property. We were traveling lots. We had a great community of friends and family. We
can roll the credits right here. I'm hoping like nothing falls apart. This sounds great. Good for you. Great. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks. And it was so funny because I could have kept rolling that for the rest of my life, and I totally could have, and probably would have ended up pretty darn happy and would have had all of the things most people are more than happy to have in their lives, and it would have been great. Except life has other plans, as I've learned, and I ended up having a health scare, and I faced the reality that I might only have a year or two left to live. And I remember laying in bed with my husband that night and asking him, "What do you want to do?" And he looked at me and he said, "Lisa, what do you want to do? You're the one that's got a timeline." And the first thing that popped into my head was move to Vancouver. And at the time, I was living in a northern remote community here in Canada. And the thought of even living in Vancouver was so foreign. It was something that I'd wanted to do since I was a little girl, and had built up this huge list of reasons why I couldn't. It's super expensive. My husband loves the outdoors. What's he going to do? We have a quad, for goodness sakes. He's a hunter. What the heck are we going to do in the city? And all these things, I just pushed it completely out of my mind. But when I was faced with that prospect that I might only have a year or two left to live, it made me very quickly realize that I was waiting for someone to say, "You're going to die," before I started allowing myself to do the things I actually wanted to do with my life. So I'm very fortunate. That was just a scare, and I'm very healthy, but that was a scare that I needed to be the catalyst to change things in my life and in both of our lives. So within the next 8 months, my husband and I both quit our jobs. We had to sell a lot of stuff. We had to sell houses, cars, and we ended up moving to downtown Vancouver. And that was just like the first couple mindset shifts for me. The first piece of me starting to say to myself, okay, what is it that I really want? What am I holding myself back from? And the second thing is, instead of saying why it's not possible, starting to ask myself how it is possible. And if you're wondering, I still have a quad in my basement in my parking stall.
I'm sorry to ask. We in California don't know what that is. What is a quad?
Okay, ATV.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, ATV. Yes. So we live in a condo building downtown Vancouver,
Nice.
and I share my parking stall with an ATV.
That's great.
So that is how it is possible.
Okay.
So after this big shift, I started looking for jobs because that's what you do. And I had another hit, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've always wanted to start a business. And I loved coaching. I had an executive coach in my corporate role and thought it was just so powerful. And I thought, you know what, this is the time. Why am I waiting? And I've realized that many of us have these things in our lives that we want to achieve, whether it is running a half marathon, whether it is finding the love of our life, whether it's going traveling for the first time or starting a business that we want to do, and yet we hold ourselves back in so many ways. And I was lucky to have that health scare, but my wish for others is to not have to be in that moment of life or death to face the fears and to get what you really want in your life. So that's where I started my coaching business and how I created it to serve others.
So I want to point out two things that really stuck out to that, and then I want to hear more about the kind of coaching that you do. One thing is that I think a lot of people feel like they have to hit rock bottom before they can make a change. And what it sounds like you're saying is really on paper, everything was going fantastic. And I mean, until the health scare, obviously, but yeah. I guess you could say like deep down, there was a sense that I was sort of playing safe and not, it's like, if you would stop the reel at this point, like everyone's happy, but you're like, darn it, that wasn't the life that I was supposed to lead. You know what I'm saying?
Totally. And I'm so glad that you made that distinction, because I don't even know if I've ever thought about that myself too, but that's so true. I think you're right. Sometimes, so I was even just talking to some of my clients yesterday and talking about how there's something like a burning platform, like things are so uncomfortable in the moment that's what makes us change. But then there's also the other side of it, which is when things are, there's something even better pulling you towards that. There's something that's like so inspiring, something that you want so deeply that pulls you from where you are, whether where you are is amazing or horrible. And for me, I didn't even give myself that permission to want anything more. Even though life was really great, I wasn't even allowing myself to dream bigger and to think bigger, because I thought, hey, I've checked all of my boxes and things are good.
You're like 30. You're like, oh, what's next?
I was like, well, just ride this train forever.
So out of curiosity, also, now you were able to build a successful career. You had a husband that was working and had a successful career, and both of you guys were able to make this transition to kind of building a business that you really enjoyed. What advice would you give someone who perhaps doesn't have that level of stability in their life, or you could say, had been successful and lost the money in some, whatever it might be. And what do you start to do? How do you start to scratch your creative or entrepreneurial itch in an environment where you don't necessarily have the capacity of going full out and, focusing on your dreams?
Yeah, such a good question. So I think there was kind of two parts there. Make sure I hit them both for you. So the first one I want to say to anybody, because I've had this question before. It's like, well, Lisa, it's really easy for you've already had the career, you've built up some finances. That's really different for you to take the leap than it is for other people. But let me tell you that mindset is going to eat your strategy for breakfast every single time. And I can tell you so many people who at the same point, I'm going to take the example of going traveling. People that when I was 19 years old and I wanted to go traveling and other people did too, other people were like, well, I've never even made money. I have no money. I better get a job first, or I better go to school first. And I'm going to do that. And then I will travel. Or vice versa, the people that are like, okay, well, I'll travel like once I'm retired. Or I guess my point is that there's never really that perfect moment. That I feel like I've met just as many people who use the excuse of wanting to start a business, but not being able to because they're so fresh. They're 20, 22 years old, just graduated. I don't know anybody. I don't know what I'm doing. I have no money. I better at least start and do something. As I've met people that are 33 or 43 that are like, well, crap, now I have a mortgage or maybe more mortgages. Now I maybe have a car payment. I've got children. I've got a partner to look after. We've got to start saving because retirement's 20 or 30 years away. And I've watched those curves. I've seen what happens to your money if you don't start putting it in now. So I feel like no matter what situation you're in, there's always that leap of faith that you have to take, and that there can always be excuses that hold you back. And that's why I do believe that it's your mindset, your ability to get over that fear that's going to eat the strategy for breakfast. We all know and read stories of people that didn't start their businesses till they were 40 and blew it out of the water, and people that started their business, Mark Zuckerberg at 21 and dropped out of Harvard and he blew his out of the water. So I think that it's so much more about cultivating the right mindset, and not necessarily that you have to like go all in or go extreme, but figuring out what it is that's going to work for you and how you can instead use your excuses as your why and as your reason for why that makes it easier for you to do it.
That's a beautiful way of looking at it. I wanted to, that was what you just said was amazing. And to call attention to the fact that, as of late, you look at these 20-year-olds who have accomplished amazing things, or 21-year-olds, and you look at a guy and he's 30 years old and he's already built, multi-billion-dollar business. Then you look at yourself and you're like, I don't know, I'm 50. I got nothing. What am I'm 23 and I missed my opportunity. So it's like, what you're saying is fantastic, is that you have to realize that there are really people at every stage of life, every race and ethnicity and socioeconomic class that has broken that barrier. And you can either look at all the people that have done it that are not like you and say, well, because I'm like me, I can't do it. Or you could say, I just have to find that example of the retired school teacher at 80 years old that, built something that they love. And forget about the money or the business per se. It's just like, get out and draw, get out and paint. Like you had mentioned yoga and travel, and these are things that your bio mentioned yoga. You didn't say anything about that, but I'm putting that right.
I'm in Vancouver. I think the two go together.
Right, exactly. So it's like, that you have to start at some point in your life actually living your life, as opposed to just kind of planning or making excuses why you're not. Absolutely.
Because I know that it was scary. It's totally scary walking away from a 6-figure job. There's a reason they're called the golden handcuffs. That's scary, right?
What did you? Okay, so besides the scare, which is a very big scare, what were some of the things you were telling yourself that you can replicate for people who? Again, I don't want to call it an opportunity of having that, because it's certainly, most people would never want that. But, what were the mindset that you had to adopt as you were saying, no, thank you, I'm not going to go get all those comfortable benefits and have my parents think I'm crazy, et cetera?
Yes. Okay. One of the biggest shifts I made was to start asking, how is it possible? So instead of listing all the reasons why it's not, start asking, how is it possible? And so, I'm going to use my move to Vancouver as that example, but how is it possible? Well, and if you haven't heard, for those listening, or Vancouver is traditionally makes most of the list of the most expensive places to live in the world.
Okay.
Very expensive place. And we were coming from a 3,000 square foot house with a 3,000 square foot house with a triple car garage and a backyard. And my husband loved all that. I was like, how are we ever going to make this work? And it was like, okay, well, we can make this work if we live in a smaller space. And like, that is something just in itself that is a huge mindset shift for the majority of North Americans to even fathom living in a smaller space. But that was something that would make our dream possible. How is it possible? Well, it means that we have to sell our investment property at this point, and it means that we have to live in a smaller space for 4 to 6 months. Like, we literally lived in 500 square feet, right. And a glass wall in our as a condo for a while to make it work and to find the right home. How is it possible? We had to sell vehicles. We had to sell a lot of our stuff. How is it possible? My husband actually has a job that he had to switch, and he now commutes. So he's gone for 2 weeks, and then he's here in Vancouver for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So that allows him to do what he really loves to do too, because he's really passionate about the career and the work that he's doing, but still allows him to be in this community. Right? How do you do it? Well, you look for a parking stall where you can fit your ATV in there, right? Like, it's just amazing what happens when you open that up and start asking how it's possible. Another thing that one of my good friends helped me do is, and this is, I think, a really good one, if somebody's even maybe thinking, well, should I just dive in now, or should I wait like 2 years, of what should I do? I tell people to flip a coin, and one side is do it now, one side is do it in 5 years, and see what comes up. And often one of the sides, you're either going to be disappointed when you see it, or you're going to be like, okay. And then what I tell people is, if you get that first initial gut instinct, that's going to tell you something. But let's say you don't get that. Let's say you don't get the gut instinct. Pretend for a week or for maybe a month, whatever works for you, that's what you're doing. pretend that, in 60 days, you're going to be quitting your job, and start going through that process. Think about how that feels. Like, what conversations are you having? What kind of podcasts are you going to be listening to? Who are you going to be meeting with? What kind of research are you doing? What does that feel like? And if that feels really good, go with that. And if not, flip the coin again, and next week try it a different way and say, okay, what about 5 years? How does that feel? I think often we get so afraid to take that first step, or we feel like we need to know all of the answers before we even get started, that it stops us from taking that first step. And that sometimes I think it's so great to just envision it and pretend it for a week and see how it feels. Then you get the opportunity to actually try a couple steps, see what's going on, if it's working for you or not, before you take the full dive and quit that job and then wonder a week later what the heck you did.
That's amazing. In a lot of ways, it takes the stress out of making the decisions. Something similarly that I try to do with myself and do with clients is to say, sort of like, what's the least bad option right now, as opposed to, we're always trying to think, what's the best thing I can do? And then you get all kinds of anxiety because, like, I don't know, this is the best thing, maybe this wouldn't work. And then, very often if you take the stress out of, like, okay, forget about it. Let's not even say it's a good thing that you're doing, but like, what's the next least bad thing you could possibly do? Oftentimes you kind of know, and you're able to move into that without that same level of anxiety or angst that comes with, you're trying to, like, oh, this is going to be the one thing that works for me for the rest of my life. You know what I mean?
Yes, totally. I feel like we often put so much pressure on ourselves to do the one thing or to do it the right way. And I think, I love that, the least bad thing, like, just take a little bit of pressure off. Like, you're going to make mistakes, and that's going to be okay. That is such a beautiful way of looking at it. I think I'm going to steal that there.
Take it. It's all yours. Out of curiosity, so who are your ideal clients, and what do you think are the most profoundly debilitating mindsets they have that you help them shift out of?
Oh, my ideal clients are people that believe, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, that they can have it all, that they want to have a career that's meaningful. They want to travel. They want to have a relationship that's loving. They want to have time for family or friends, whatever that looks like. And they don't want to just be stressed out all the time. They don't want to be running from one appointment to the other, or looking back on the year and wondering, what did I do with my life? My ideal clients are the ones that are curious about creating more and are willing to do the work and finding it, and are looking for that support and looking for some guidance to get them closer to where they want to be.
Can I interrupt you on that with a quick question? Do you think there are some people out there, because this is something that might be a personality type, but there are certain people out there just kind of happy with, or just kind of like going through the motions, I guess, but those aren't the right people. There are other people. The fact that someone would raise their hand, like when you're talking, I raise my hand, I'm like, yes, I want to do that. Right. So that sort of indicates that this is something that is doable. Mm-hmm. I guess you're saying that if a person does have that draw towards the message that you just put out there, that means that within them is this capacity to eventually have multiple things, be successful in multiple categories, so to speak. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And, it's really funny. I think you're conscious. You're the one that's like, yes, I'm raising my hand. I want that. And I will also tell you that some of my clients, actually just this week, I'm so glad you're bringing this up, because we were talking about this. And she wrote to me and said, I asked her to look at her 80th birthday and imagine what that looks like. Who's there in the room? What are they saying about you? What are you guys eating, drinking? What's the mood? All of those things. And she wrote to me and she was like, can I be honest? This question really annoyed me. And she was like, do I have to leave a massive legacy? Why do I have to want more? Can't I just be happy in my everyday life? Mm. And so I want to share that because, first of all, she's someone who signed up for me, even though she obviously is not the kind of person that would have raised her hand on that. But
right. That's I would say that's a hard thing. I wouldn't know what to say at that point, but I guess so,
Well, I'll share with you what I say and what I believe. But I just want to say that, like, she's somebody who consciously is not necessarily wanting more, but she's still like someone that was attracted to what I'm working on. And because she's still got this little innate piece of her, even whether she recognizes it or not, whether she's that one to put her hand up, there's something in her that wants more and is digging. At the same time, consciously, she's like, why can't I just be happy? What's going on? And this is what I share. And I think that this man, if this is another thing that if everyone could just understand this, it would be a game changer. But I feel like there's two coins in life here. There's like your best self coin and there's your judging coin. And I don't know always based on what somebody said, which coin they're operating from, but that's where the answer is. So let me give you an example of this. Me saying, and you saying, we want it all. Like we want to have great families, travel, careers where we're giving back. And like, I want all of these things. It can be coming from our best self, from that coin, or it could be coming from that I'm never enough. I need to do more. I need to have more, like always better, 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 never satisfied, that energy, that like judging piece. On the flip side, you can also be content and happy in this day and finding the joy and being like, on my 80th birthday, I hope we're all sitting around, like she's from London. She's like, I hope we're all sitting around a London pub, having some beers, and everyone's saying, every time I saw her, she was joyful. Or every time I saw her, she told me the best dirty joke, whatever it is, and that can be like simple moments, and in loving that life can be enough. And also, I've seen a lot of people that come to me with that mindset of like, shouldn't you just be happy with what you have? You have more than your parents ever had. You have more than 90% of the population, 99% of the population. Isn't that enough? Why aren't you satisfied? Why isn't that enough that you're just living your life? Why do you always need to have more? And so those two thoughts, wanting more, wanting the best life can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing. And wanting to be happy every day can be a really good thing if it's coming from your true self and what you really want, or it can be that judge that's holding you back from going for what you really want in your life.
What advice would you give someone who wants to take the first step, to take the, again, if it's whatever it might be that they identify, if you're working with someone, it's crazy, trying to think that earlier times, people would just raise families. That would be what they would do, or people would just work. And nowadays, I think you could say pretty confidently, both men and women are sharing more of the workforce, sharing more of the home life. There's this whole idea about, a marriage actually takes work. Like, I think that there was a certain level of a lack of awareness for quite a while where, just people would stay together because they stay together. And now we're socialized and aware that, no, like marriage is a choice. Relationships are a choice. There's a barometer that also takes time. Then there's this whole like physical health thing. We used to work outside. Now we work inside. So we have to find the yogas and the martial arts and the, CrossFit to keep healthy. So like, what would you say to someone who recognizes that there are 5, 6, 7 things in their life that really take full-time effort and focus in order to do it really well? How do they get started with kind of going on with everything or anything?
Okay. And here's where I think that there's many paths to it. So I think the first thing is to just draw up attachment to finding the perfect path, or thinking that there's only one and that you have to follow that one. For some people, for example, getting their fitness is the catalyst that then improves their relationships and improves their career and improves, their ability to be mindful in the moment, and therefore everything else expands. For other people, that might be starting with a relationship. And once your relationship, your marriage is in a great place, then all of a sudden that frees you up to go for the bigger career or the smaller career or whatever that looks like. So I think that first thing is just release attachment that there's only one way, and don't just wait for that one perfect thing.
And so to also what I'm hearing you say as well is, it's like, don't look at there's 6 things I have to do all at once, but rather figure out that one thing that's going to make the other stuff actually fall into line much faster.
Yes, okay. Totally. So often I think we have to do, I'm guilty of this too. We think we have to do everything by the time we're 30 or 40 or 50. And life really is a marathon and not a sprint. And every single day does not look, for me, perfectly balanced. Every single week doesn't always, but over the whole of a couple weeks or a couple months, and definitely over the year, things feel like we're all moving along. And I think that it's really important to think about, what is that one thing that right now that is going to make a really big difference for me? And again, don't spend years figuring this out, because it's years you could have been making a difference. So pick one and try it and see how that works. But I've been learning this just in the last couple of weeks around focus. And often most people know like what that one thing is. Most people have an idea what the one thing is that if they put a bit more focus on, that it would actually start to impact everything in their lives. Another interesting fact about this is that most people severely overestimate what we can do in 1 year and severely underestimate what we can do in 5 years. Like you're literally no more than 5 years away from a drastically different life and something that's completely different, but you can't do it all today. And so another helpful tool with that I found is to envision what that 5 years looks like and start rolling back almost as if you were watching a VHS. I don't know how young your listeners are.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
But almost as if you were winding the video camera from that, or start the Netflix video at the end. How's that? And then roll backwards. So if in 5 years you do want an Oscar, or you want to have run a marathon, or you want to have a 7-figure business, or whatever that is for you. Okay, what are you doing like the day before that? What are you doing the week before that? What are you maybe doing the month before that? Okay, now roll that back. What are you doing 2 years before that? What are you doing 3 years? And now we're actually getting into like 4 years away, which is this present year. And doing that, like working from the end and working backwards, can be a really powerful way, again, of understanding what we can do in this moment, in this week, in this month, in this year, to get us closer to where we really want to be. I feel like that helps us break it down from not feeling like we have to do it all at once. And also sometimes I have people that say, okay, I get it, like up here, I know what I want to be or what I want to do, but what do I do today? That's a really tangible way to at least start rolling that video camera backwards and imagine what that means for you today, this week, this month.
And maybe as a time went really fast. We might have to do part 2 of this. But as a, I guess you could say a final question, when you say something like that, and because I think it's certainly a spiritual principle that a lot of times we don't attempt because we don't think it's possible. And one of the principles that struck me very, very strongly was there's this idea that at the end of our lives, we are shown a vision of what we could have accomplished, and it's far beyond what we could ever imagine. And so that the suffering is not like, oh, I was supposed to be X and I didn't become X, but I actually did have latent potential that I didn't actualize. And so when you just said that thing, it's like in 5 years, you could be in a totally different place. I felt this level of resistance saying like, oh, geez, like I don't even know. Like it almost creates a sense of like, if you know you can do it, it creates a sense of like, I'm almost scared. So what advice would you give to that sense, that fear of like not reaching what you can, even though you might have the potential and you're like scared to get started?
Well, my first question is always to check in on, are you going from the best self coin or from the judging coin? Amazing. If it's your true self that's like, I'm just really happy with what I got right now and that's okay, then I would say that's okay. Listen to that self. But if that's your judger being like, I don't know if I can do it, I'm not sure if I'm good enough, then you can start to recognize that and start to also understand it for what it is. I said one of my big principles when we were doing our move was, how is it possible? And that's one of the things that I encourage when I do goal setting workshops. I give 2 rules. And one of them is ask, how is it possible? And the second one is allow yourself permission to dream really big. And I think, I wish I had it in front of me and I don't, but Marianne Williamson has just this beautiful quote. And basically what she says is that for most people, we're not afraid of our darkness. We're actually afraid of our light and how great we are, because how dare we to be so brilliant and so fabulous, and who do we think we are? And yet that's exactly who we're meant to be. And so I think that there is this fear that a lot of people have of being great and of being visible and having all that. And so I think that's such a principle to hold in mind, is that it is possible to have it all, and to understand that yes, we can be afraid of being the best of ourselves, but then it's up to us to go inside and say, okay, how can I break through that fear? Because I am worthy and you are worthy, and there's no reason that we shouldn't all be able to shine our lights and have our best lives that we deserve, because it's only creating better for ourselves and for those around us.
That was awesome. Lisa, thank you so much. Tell me a little bit about how people can find you and follow what you're doing.
Oh, thanks. I really hope that this helps shed some light. I wish I'd had this a couple of years ago. So anybody wants to find me, Instagram is my platform where I try and connect the most often. So you can find me Li_Michaud, Michaud. And I have a website, lisamichaud.com as well. And I'd love if anybody's interested. One of the things that I am really big about, and that was a game changer for me, is weekly planning. And I actually have my weekly planning sheet in front of me here. That I'm all about that.
That's awesome.
And I find that a way to connect with my goals every single week. What am I doing? Who am I being? And just every week committing to 2 or 3 actions that I can take towards that goal. So I have a sheet that I've created, and if you're open, I'd love to share it with your listeners.
Please.
It's totally free. They can pick it up on my website. I can share the link with you too, and
Please.
you can grab that, and hope that helps them. Just remember that it's about baby steps, right? No matter how big your dream is, there's always at least one step that you can do this week to get you a little bit closer there.
That's amazing. Okay, great. The link for that will be in the show notes. And Lisa, I appreciate the time.
My pleasure.
There you have it, folks, another inspiring episode. If you enjoyed this, I ask you to please share this with your friends and to like us over on Rabbi Rupp through Facebook or on YouTube. And the more that we're able to get these important messages out, the more that we can really make an impact in the world. So I encourage you, please, to stay tuned. We have a ton of amazing speakers coming up, and also to tell your friends about it. Thank you very much.